Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of TruthWanted. I am your host, ObjectivelyDan, and this is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. We talk to you about what you believe and why, live on the air right now. It's happening. So call into the show if you want to talk to us, and we'd love to do it. And every single week, I always have a special guest with me. This week is no different. It's Richard Gilliver, everybody. Richard, welcome back to TruthWanted. How are you doing?
I'm very good, and I'm very, very excited to be here. It's been a long time coming, me coming back on, and I'm excited about it, and I'm intrigued about the frog sat on your shoulder.
Yep. We're going to talk about that. So, Richard, you're a return guest, right? You've been on this show before. You're a host on Nonprofits, and some news happened this week that a lot of people have been talking about that has really been a long time coming. So I thought, Richard, what we're gonna do is something a little bit different. I'm calling this a Dan deep dive right here. Okay, it's something I've wanted to do for a long time, but because we have new guests every single week, I usually focus the first 20 minutes or so of the show talking to our guests and introducing them and getting their perspective on things. But not saying that you're not special, Richard. You are special, but you have been on the show before. And you're also a host here at the AC, so a lot of people already know you. So I think I want to spend this first 20 minutes talking exclusively and meticulously about the one and only Alex Jones. Okay, now, Richard, how much do you know about Alex Jones?
I know very, very little about him. I know he's in court for something. I'm not quite sure what. And I know he has a radio show and he's into conspiracy theories. And that is literally the extent of my knowledge about the guy.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's what a lot of people would say. A lot of people know him because he was featured on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of years ago. He had a very viral clip going around about people using chemical bombs to turn frogs gay. He's called Hillary Clinton a demon, amongst other things. I mean, he's kind of like this internet meme. Honestly, I've seen a lot of edits of his rants and stuff. There's remixes of his songs, but I feel, Richard, that there's a lot of people that don't really know who Alex is. I mean, they get he's like this conspiracy guy, right? But like the impact that this man has had is kind of crazy, and it's really ridiculous how far his reach has gone. Now, the big news about him this week, in case you haven't been hearing about it, is the Sandy Hook trials have been happening. Okay, so what this is for those of you who aren't familiar, in 2012 there was a shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School where some children passed away, and Alex Jones during that week, and now we can actually say this because the court has determined this, did talk about the Sandy Hook shooting and claimed that it was a false flag attack. He claimed that it didn't actually happen and that there were actors involved. He later recanted this and said that he was just giving information that he was seeing, but the recording of that is still there. So that's out there for the world to see. He is now they're now having to award $45 million to the families of Sandy Hook that because of the actions that he's committed through his show, right, perpetuating these lies. Now, that's a lot of money. So you have to wonder, what is why is it so much? What did he have to do this? Well, for starters, Infowars, which is his website, according to Jones, gets about 6 million hits a month in unique visitors, which is a lot of people. He also has a YouTube channel that has about 2 million views. And of course, his stuff gets restreamed and put all over the place. He has a couple different news sites, actually. He has another one called Prison Planet, which I don't think is working anymore. and News Wars is another one that he is a contributor for. Okay, so he's a big influence in these kinds of circles, and because of this, because he made the claims that this was a false flag attack and that this happened, the parents of the families were harassed. According to them, according to the jury, it's not the jury, according to the folks in the court, pretty much on a daily basis, and had to obviously go through a lot of trauma because of that, right? When you have random people coming up to you saying that you're not real, you're just an actor, and you're being harassed in public places, right? And also your child is dead because they were real and they did have a life. Like that's just trauma on top of trauma. It's not great. So personally, I'm glad that this court case finally went through. The Sandy Hook massacre happened 10 years ago now. So really, this is a long time coming for this going on. But that's why people are talking about Alex Jones today. And of course, amongst other things, he is a huge conspiracy theorist, and he's talked about a lot of different other kinds of theories besides Sandy Hook, and we'll probably get to that in just a second. So that's why we're talking about this stuff today, Richard. It's pretty heavy. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not great. But I think it's important to understand who this guy is. He's not just a meme machine. He's not just a guy you can just make fun of. He's actually responsible for detrimentally affecting the lives of hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably people's lives. I mean, like if you start to really believe the stuff that he believes and you act on it, like that's going to affect your relationships with people. That's going to affect your politics. That's going to affect a lot of things. And he's just done an uncountable amount of damage. It is crazy. So, you excited, Richard? You excited to learn more about Alex Jones today?
I'm excited, and I'm also a little bit horrified that somebody has that much influence, and that people will listen to that and take that information unchecked, and go ahead and do that kind of stuff to harass the parents of dead children. Is something else.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. And folks, of course, as always, you can call in about any particular topic that runs into the jowls of Truth Wanted, right? We cover a lot of things here, so don't feel like you have to specifically orient your call towards Alex Jones related material. We'll take conspiracy stuff, we'll take Christianity, we'll take whatever you want to talk about. But please feel free to call into the number, and the number is there below. It's 512-991-9242. Or you can visit the website. It's at tiny.cc/call-TW. I also need to point out ahead of time that this show, Truth Wanted, is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c nonprofit that's dedicated to the promotion of the separation of church and state and for positive atheism. So we got a bunch of other shows here that you should definitely check out as well. And Richard is on at least one of them. And you go around. You make your rounds to places, I think.
Yeah,
anyway.
I do. I get around a little bit, but
You
I'm a non-profit first and foremost, and
right, of course.
So
let's talk a little bit more about Alex Jones. Okay, so Alex Emmerich Jones, born on February 11th, 1974, is of course a guy who's known for doing his show, and he's pretty much always been doing his show, right? So the first thing that Alex Jones really talks about as far as major events happening to him was the Waco siege. I'm assuming you're familiar with the Waco siege, Richard. This happened in Jones's senior year of high school, right? So big deal, big impact. A lot of stuff was happening in the 90s. Basically, in case you're not familiar with this, in Waco, Texas, my hometown, shout out to the 254, basically outside of Waco, Texas. It really didn't actually happen in it, but 45 minutes outside. There was a guy named David Koresh who had a cult out there with a compound, and he took hostages of women and children, and the FBI and the ATF couldn't actually save a lot of those that were hostage, and it was eventually burned down, right? So like Jones has talked about some other stuff that has influenced him as far as books and things like that, but like that event I think really spurred him, right? There's actually a video of him on the side of it talking about what's going on. He was actually practicing for like a school media thing. It's really weird to see like a younger version of him. You can check that out. But you know, the other things that happened in the 90s too was the Oklahoma city bombings, right? And so the Oklahoma city bombings was another thing. There was this kind of whole militia movement that was happening in the 90s. And like Jones was really influenced by that. Another thing he was influenced was a guy named Bill Cooper. Those of you guys know who Bill Cooper is. He was basically the progenitor to Alex Jones. He was a conservative radio talk show host that talked a lot about the stuff that Alex Jones talks about, right? Anti-government sentiments, sort of the kind of libertarian ideals, really, but also just like, really anti-government in general, right? Like there's obviously these kinds of bouts of conservatism in there, which Alex Jones definitely talks about a lot. But that was kind of the appeal for him. Eventually, Alex Jones got started with a public access television show in the late 90s and early 2000s. And here's a fun little fact, Richard. That show, the public access one that he was running, which was also syndicated, by the way, to a whole bunch of other places, which is why you guys have probably heard it if you were around in the 90s and were listening to it in your car radios. The place where he actually filmed part of that public access show was the same building that the Atheist Community of Austin was doing Atheist Experience in down in Austin. So that's a fun little fact.
I have heard that before, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And I believe there's at least one clip of Alex Jones calling into the Atheist Experience. I think that's on YouTube that you could look at. So really fun fact there. But anyway, so he's living in Austin, and going forward a couple of years, 9/11 happened, right? And he says something to the effect of he's 98% sure that this is basically an inside job. And that was basically the straw, right, that broke the camel's back for the network that he was a part of. He was also talking about some other stuff too, about like Bill Clinton and other people, that were actually part of the secret cabal and stuff. But his 9/11 stuff was a pretty hot take. And not only was it a hot take, like he was saying it like as it was happening, like day one, as the towers were falling, right? Like he was on his show talking about it. So like he wasn't just a truther, he was like a day one truther. And he's actually one of the biggest influences to the 9/11 truther movement out there. Part of which because later he would be part of several different film series that talks about 9/11 that he contributed to. It was basically interviewed on for these other people. And people kind of saw him as that guy. So before he was the gay frogs guy, he was the 9/11 guy. That was a big thing that Alex Jones was known for. So let me stop my lecture for a second. Rich, any questions so far about Alex Jones and his history and who he is?
I'm just astounded that somebody like that would get the kind of following that he has got. There must be some underlying kind of appeal to having that kind of idol, if you like, and who you can look up to. And Alex Jones seemed to be very, very strange bed partners.
Yeah,
it's not someone I'd really want to look up to.
Not somebody I'd want to look up to either, right? For a lot of reasons. But like, if you ever listen to a show, by the way, let's talk about a show. Let's side tangent here on the biography of Jones. Let's talk about the show. A lot of people don't know what he does because they just kind of see clips of his show on YouTube. This man hosts Infowars 5 days a week. Actually, sometimes he does Saturdays as well, for 4 hours, right? So he usually hosts the first 3 and then somebody else hosts the last. Look, I host this show for an hour and a half once a week. And that can be a lot sometimes, like for 5 days a week doing, it's a lot. And he also still does the call-in show stuff too, right? But in between his supplement ad breaks and other, crazy crap, he's just talking about some really nasty and awful stuff. But because he just kind of says it every day, there's stuff that like would be mind-blowing to hear about, but it just happens all the time. So nobody really covers it. For example, Richard, did you know that he has he puts on a digital dragon face where he does a Chinese caricature called Fentanyl, the Chi-Com dragon, and speaks in a Chinese accent and talks about
the policies of Xi Jinping.
Yeah. It's super racist and very shocking to see. But like nobody cares because like only weird people watch Alex Jones, right? Like that's kind of the sentiment, really. Like if you covered every single weird and crazy thing Alex Jones said, like it would just be on your news feed every single day because he just never stops. But anyway, it's kind of weird and it's kind of crazy. So like, anyway, going back to his show, right? He did this thing called the Alex Jones Show. That was kind of his independent thing. And then eventually it was doing Infowars, right? Infowars is kind of the main branch in which he talks about most of his stuff. It's actually a subsidiary of a company called Free Speech Systems, which was actually the company that was in the recent case that was happening, right? And like this is just what he's been doing, right? When you're talking about 6 million monthly visitors to a website, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot of people. So like you have to wonder,
No.
why don't you hear about this guy more, right? Like obviously he comes up and pops up and says all these things, but like what about the specific things he says? Like what does he talk about? Well, there's a long list of things that we could talk about from what he talks about, and everything he says is like patently false. If you like flip a coin for like every sentence he says on a show, there's more than 50% chance actually that what he says is just blatantly wrong. Like it's actually astonishing how wrong he is. Of course, if you remember back when Hillary Clinton was kind of under fire because of the Benghazi attacks, he was one of the ones that was one of the most ardent supporters saying to lock her up. In fact, he actually brought Donald Trump on his show to talk about it. So that's a really fun fact for you there. When the COVID the COVID pandemic was first starting, he actually made the claim that it wasn't real, but then he kind of went back on that and said that it was real, but that it was, some sort of Chinese government operation. And then he got in trouble because he claimed that one of his supplements could actually help you be cured of COVID. It got to the point where the New York Supreme Court, I believe, filed a thing against him saying, hey, you can't actually say that because that's illegal. So, I could list off all of the weird and wacky stuff that he said, but, it's just all wrong. So why do people believe this stuff? Like, what do people get in this that they don't get anywhere? Because the way he talks about his material, it's either anger or fear, right? Like those are the two primary emotions he tries to invoke in his audience. And people who are really susceptible to that kind of stuff will really latch onto it. Like I can't tell you how many times he said that the end of the world is coming, or that the government is going to take stuff down. In fact, Richard, here's a fun fact. When COVID was first getting started in March of 2020, I saw Alex Jones at a liquor store here in Austin. I think I told this story before. And I just listened to the conversation he was having with the cashier saying that he was saying, oh, the mayor is going to put us under martial law. And this was going to be it. This was when we were all going to go into the FEMA death camps and stuff that he likes to talk about. Like I literally heard him say this in real life. There's a lot of people that say like, oh, he's just playing a character. He's not. He's not. I know in 2017 he had.
Can you imagine being that cashier and having to listen to that while you're doing your job?
Honestly, her English wasn't super good, so I don't know if she like caught all that. But I don't know. I think she was just kind of nodding and going along. By the way, he drives an ugly ass green Camaro. It's really bad. He also has a super tank that he drives too. There's footage of that. I saw driving downtown during the Black Lives Matter protest, and he like had his bullhorn and was just saying just random bullshit. It was whatever. But anyway, so there's another thing that I want to point out too. When people say, "Oh, he's just playing a character," in 2017 during his this divorce court proceedings, his lawyer made the defense that this was a character, and a lot of people cite that as evidence of saying like, "Oh, look, he's just a character. This is all fake." But he actually said later that week on his show, like once the court proceedings were finished and stuff, that he was just saying what his lawyer was telling him to. Like he just admits that on the air. So, how much does he believe in all this stuff? I think he definitely like emphasizes stuff for dramatic effect. There's no way that he believes everything that he says, but I think there's like a core of it that he sincerely believes is true. Like even in the most recent court proceedings with the Sandy Hook stuff, there was a moment where one of the defendants was going up there and saying, I know that that this is real. I know that you really believe that. And he's sitting there like shaking his head. Like he doesn't actually think that this lady is real. She thinks that she's just a paid actor and that this whole thing is just a stunt against him. So anyway, I have a lot of collected thoughts here, Richard, but really they're not collected. They're all over the place. I mean, like there's so much you can talk about with this guy and how he is really turned people's brains into mush. Like it's really sad to see, and yet he is one of the founders of the conspiracy movement that's like currently really shaking America right now. Like there's more people now believing in conspiracy theories than ever, and that's not just 9/11 stuff. That's all across the board. But anyway, I've been talking a lot here, Richard. So what are your thoughts?
I to be honest, as soon as you said it'd been on Joe Rogan, that said pretty much all I needed to know about
there
him.
is that too. So this is what I don't understand. In 2020, actually, he did this twice. Joe Rogan claims that he's friends with Alex Jones and just had him on his show, right? And he was like so impressed because like Alex was talking about some specific document he read, and this actually predicted. He kind of does these weird con tricks on what he thinks he actually knows when really it's just kind of made up stuff. And I don't know why he did that, to be honest with you. I think that's misinformation. I think that you have a responsibility as a host to correct somebody if it goes that far. Now, obviously, there's a difference between a conversation and reporting, right? Joe Rogan's not a reporter. He doesn't have to correct the record as he's having conversation. I mean, if I had to correct the record for every single time I talk to somebody on here, we wouldn't get anything done, right? Sometimes you just got to listen to people and when they talk through. But you know what? I don't invite Alex Jones on my show. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a difference in like responsibility there. And Joe Rogan has the literally most popular podcast on the planet Earth, and you have a guy like Alex Jones on there. Yeah, I get it. A lot of people are just laughing at him, but there's always going to be a percentage of people that take away from that and be like, wow, like this guy's legit. He's so cool. He knows so much. And then they fall into that rabbit hole. So
Yeah.
very sad. Very sad. So anyway,
Very scary.
and very scary. And very scary. I mean, like, you want to talk about the harms of this stuff. I mean, these parents were just awarded $45 million, right? For all the damages that have been caused to them. I mean, they're personally affected by this. And that's not even including every other false flag attack that's been claimed for every other kind of shooting and every other kind of tragedy that's happened, right? There's real victims that happen here. Like when I first was starting this show, Richard, I definitely had a more whimsical attitude towards this stuff. I was just like, we get to talk about fun conspiracy theories and all this wacky stuff that people believe. And yeah, there's an element to that. But now I'm a little more jaded. I'm just like, you know what? Like people have really been hurt by this stuff. And it's not just going to go away anytime soon. This isn't just like somebody in their basement just talking out their ass. This is like real people out in the real world getting hurt. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how you can like stop somebody from doing this. I guess we had this court case, so that's probably gonna, slow things down. I definitely think that was a necessary thing. I think it should have happened 10 years ago, but we just kind of have to wait up on that.
The thing is, with this court case, it sounds like it's going to hopefully deter any kind of copycat behavior from other people, because listening to what you've said, and I didn't know much about Alex Jones before coming on here tonight, it doesn't sound like he's got an intention of changing his attitude or his behavior over this.
No, I mean, he's been called out for different stuff before, right? Like this isn't the first time he's been accused of doing something wrong. I mean, he's obviously been banned on pretty much every social media platform that isn't, these kinds of alt-right websites. So he always just kind of doubles down. And the other thing too, oh man, we didn't even get to this part. He was there during the January 6th insurrection as well. And actually,
why is that not a surprise, Dan?
No, not a surprise at all. Now, that's the other thing too. Recently in this case, apparently, I think it was the Department of Justice got a hold of his text. Correct me if I'm wrong, viewers, but I think it was the Department of Justice have now gotten a hold of his text messages as well. This was a funny thing that happened in this case, is that somehow his lawyers sent all records of his text messages for the past 2 years to the opposing counsel, to the prosecutors. And in the state of Texas, if you don't claim that as privilege for like 10 days, then you can just use it. And they just used it in court. They were just like, Yeah, like your lawyer messed up. I don't know how you mess up that badly. But Alex Jones's lawyers is a whole other rabbit hole that I don't have time for, honestly. Um, So anyway, there's so much to be said. I've literally only scratched the surface. But if anybody wants to know more about this stuff, I had Jordan from the Knowledge Fight podcast on here, and his podcast is really great. They cover exclusively Alex Jones and his stuff, and also the people kind of in his world. So they're a great podcast to listen to, and they've definitely been doing coverage on all this stuff recently as well. I haven't got a chance to hear it. I'm sure their commentary is insightful, but I've been listening to their show for a few years, and they're really good. So anyway, there's my plug for that. But for now, I think, Richard, unless you have any more, commentary on the given situation, we should probably take some calls. What do you think?
Yeah, let's jump in. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, cool. So anyway, this has been an episode of Dan's Deep Dives. This is me talking a lot and kind of a new thing. So let me know in the comments if you like me doing that, or if you prefer more of these kinds of conversations. Personally, I enjoy telling Richard about all of this wacky stuff going on and seeing his reaction to it. Oh, one more thing I need to mention as well that I didn't. So the Branch Davidians, right? The folks that had their building burned down and stuff because the FBI and the ATF kind of lit it on fire. Alex Jones actually led a commission to rebuild their buildings out there. And I've seen this myself. You can go out there on their property, and there's a plaque saying that has Alex Jones' name on it because he helped the Branch Davidians build their church back. Because a lot of people don't realize not all of them died in that incident. Like, there's still people that are there, and they're still there to this day. So that's another fun fact. And there's so many fun facts you can talk about with this guy. But I really do have to move on, I think. So anyway, before we get to the calls today, I have to thank the wonderful patrons that help make this show happen every single week. I, of course, want to thank all the patrons that help make this show happen, but we always give a special shout out to one particular patron every week. So this week's patron of the week is going to be Will Arnold. Thank you so much, Will Arnold, for donating. And if you would like to donate and help make this show happen, you can do that. It's patreon.com slash tiny.cc/PatreonTW. I always mess up the Patreon link, I feel like. Anyway, it's a great place to help support this show. Just so you know, myself, Richard, most of the crew that helps make the show happen, we're all volunteers. And so when you donate to that Patreon, you help pay for stuff that makes this show happen and also other stuff that happens at the ACA. So thank you to everybody who donates on there. And for now, Richard, I think we should get to some more calls. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk to Steve, who's calling in from Arizona. Steve, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, it's great to talk to you guys. Love your show.
Thanks, Steve. What you got for us?
Am I wrong about this, or did you say that Alex Jones was involved in the production of the 9/11 conspiracy movie called Loose Change?
He was involved in so he was interviewed for Loose Change. He's been involved in a couple of 9/11 movies, but Loose Change was a series. And he was at least part of some of those series. Yes.
Well, having seen the movie, I have to believe that there is something to the 9/11 conspiracy. I don't think it was exactly the way that.
Yeah. Okay. So which conspiracy are you talking about, right? Because there's a couple of different takes on how 9/11 supposedly went down. What do you think is most convincing to you?
Well, for example, the plane that supposedly hit the Pentagon, then they had video footage showing that I don't remember the model of the plane, but it somehow penetrated I think a 3-foot thick concrete wall, and then it left no. The wings did not get sheared off and went into this hole, and the wreckage plane was not all. In fact, they said that they found a part of a motor that didn't even belong to that model plane, and it just doesn't seem to believable to me that it was a passenger jetliner that hit the Pentagon. It just doesn't seem possible.
Wait, you don't think it was a passenger? So you think it was a different plane than what they say it was?
Well, it seemed to me that it was a missile, actually.
Okay, but you know that like people died that were on that plane, right? Like, you know that they have records of the individuals that were there. Like, they put their names out there every year during the 9/11 memorials and stuff, and the families are there to grieve and stuff. Like those names are well known.
Well, did they recover the bodies off of the? I mean, supposedly the story, if I remember it correctly, the plane that hit the Pentagon went through the wall and then it burned up and disintegrated all the bodies. Did they actually find any bodies?
But we don't have to find bodies. I mean, if we have I mean, they've interviewed the people who like took those people's tickets. I mean, it's not like those people weren't real, right? Like, this is exactly like Sandy Hook.
No,
we have evidence.
I understand that.
Well, I don't understand. How do you think it's
the actual missile, Steve? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What is the evidence that it's a missile?
Yeah,
because it seems to be the evidence you seem to be giving us is that you don't believe it's a plane, but you've not actually given us any evidence that it's a missile yet.
Well, in the video, now I'm not saying that the video isn't some kind of a fake or something, but according to what they showed on the video itself, that it was a regular passenger plane does not have. It has a softer nose. It would not be able to penetrate and crash through that wall and leave the size hole that it did. And in addition to that,
if I can just interrupt you just 1 second, though, Steve, I know you don't think it's a plane, but my question was, what evidence is there that it's a missile? Because that was the claim you made. So let's put the plane aside. We don't need to talk about the plane. What evidence is there that it's a missile?
Well, if it was an airplane, then the wings would have been sheared off, and the hole would have been there. I mean, if it was possible for the nose of the plane to penetrate that concrete wall. But what happened to the wings from the plane?
Sorry for interrupting again, but you've mentioned airplane about 3 or 4 times since I've asked the question. What evidence is there that it's a missile? That's the question I'm asking you. I'm not asking you why you don't think it's a plane. I'm asking you specifically why you think it's a missile. What evidence is there to suggest that that's the case?
The fact that it was able to penetrate a concrete wall, whereas a regular passenger jet plane would not have been able to do that. A missile would have been able to explode, make a hole, and get through that wall.
Well, I think a plane going several hundred miles an hour at anything is probably going to do some damage, right? I mean, like, I'm not
right.
Other independent journalists, other engineers have talked about the loose change film specifically. I don't feel like I need to retrudge a lot of that territory. One, because I'm not qualified to talk about the specifics of material science, but also because like there's a lot of people who have actually taken the time to like talk about the claims specifically made by those series of films and why they aren't true, right? Like, when we talk about skepticism as far as what actually happened with those events, when we're talking about a missile hitting it, I mean, we are, as Richard pointed out, we're going outside of what's the available evidence and proposing something different. If we're going to propose something different there, I mean, that's a big, bold move. It's going to take more than just, well, it seems like based on these conditions that this would be the appropriate measures. I mean, if it's a missile, it's going to have flight records for it, right? There's going to be people that were involved with it. I don't know what a missile is going to be doing at an airport filled with passengers taking a plane. But I failed.
I'd also be very, very interested in what kind of missile it is, because if the damage caused by that missile, if it was a missile, but more likely plane, was extensive, and it's not, as far as I can tell, consistent with missile damage. If you have a look at buildings that have been hit by missile, there's a large shell of the building left. They tend to destroy the internal kind of rooms of the buildings.
I don't know that it was a missile. That's what they said in the documentary. But it could have been. I don't know what it was. But
plane?
But there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence to show that it was a jet line from the debris that was left on the lawn.
I don't know what you mean by it doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence besides the fact that it literally was a plane. Like I don't know how much more clear I can make it. Like there was a plane that was at no, Steve, there was a plane that was at an airport. People went on that plane, and then that plane is no longer there. Like I don't know what happened to those people on the plane, but some people definitely went on a plane that day.
All I'm saying is I question what really happened. There's the Pentagon thing is just one thing. What about the fact that they have video of explosive charges that were
no,
yes.
Come on, don't tell me you believe that, Steve.
Firemen were in the building. They heard explosives going off on the upper floors. It looked like a demolition type of a thing.
The demolition jet theories of the 9/11 attacks have never ever have any concrete evidence to the fact. Never. There's been any video footage of it is suspect. Any eyewitness testimony is also suspect. It's just people saying, well, it kind of seemed like it was an explosive, or it seemed like we've never been able to recover any evidence suggesting that it was bombing. And here's the thing too. It's not like that there wouldn't be a precedent for people to talk about there being a bomb there ahead of time, right? Like if the 90s was full of terrorism and a lot of that being bombs planted at public places. So it's not like that this is something that people would want to hide if they knew that it was true, right?
The week before the 9/11, there was a security check or something done in the building there, and the security cameras were shut down, and the crew was in there doing something.
This happens. People do security checks.
I don't know that this is what was in the video, so it makes me question.
Yeah. Well,
Steve, can I just ask you, because you
go ahead, Richard. Go ahead.
You said that there were some aspects of 9/11 that you thought maybe true, the conspiracies which may be true. Are you telling us now that it's the whole thing you find suspect, or is it just some aspects of it that you find suspect?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say for sure what the motive was behind it, for whatever happened, but it seems suspicious to me that all of a sudden you've got, what was there, 20 hijackers or something? They knew who these guys were, and then they're able to take over these airplanes with box cutters. I mean, these guys that were flying these planes were military pilots. Being in the military, I don't think if I was a pilot on that plane, some guy coming in there holding a box cutter is going to make me crash a plane into a building. I think I would probably put up some kind of a fight. I mean, it just seems a little ridiculous to me to think that it happened the way we were told. I don't know exactly what happened, but it just doesn't seem to me that the story that we're told.
What if I told you that the motivation was Saudi Arabians who were disaffected by the influence of the American government in the Middle East wanted to take revenge and planned a civilian attack? Like, it's not like that there wasn't
and there was a jihad put out on America.
Yeah, I mean, that
is very possible, but
when you have when your life is being threatened in a situation, a lot of us think that we would react in specific ways, but we don't. And as far as we know, it was just box cutters that got on board in there. It may have just been the not just the weapons, but also the psychology of that situation that makes people do certain things and comply in certain ways that might be unexpected. So look, I understand that you are not alone in that. A lot of Americans, I think the study I saw was like almost half think that like something was up with that. It was something like 40%. I'm not going to say that because I don't know the exact figure, but a non-zero number of Americans are definitely suspicious around the events of 9/11. And there's one thing to say, well, this is odd or this is weird, and it's another thing to make claims about what plans actually happened and what are the true events that transpired. And I understand, Steve, that's not what you're saying. You may not necessarily be saying, oh, I know what really happened. You're just pointing out some things that run contrary to what you believe could be true. But I'm going to question the source that you bring upon this, Steve, because again, if you're telling me that you got a lot of this from loose change, let me tell you, I'm not the first person to say that those series of movies are full of shit. Like, there's a lot of people who can debunk a lot of the specifics that go on in that. So I encourage you to look at some of that, because like the demolition theory and stuff, man, like that's old news. That's old stuff, man. I don't know. But anyway,
yeah,
Steve.
I know, but there was a third building that collapsed.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of claims that are made in that movie that aren't, or in the series of movies that aren't necessarily true, right? Like that are kind of a sort of mishmash of fact and fiction, right? Like if you're going to look at the events that happened on 9/11, I don't suggest looking at that movie because a lot of people have pointed out the wrong facts about that movie. Maybe if we looked at a documentary together about the consensus opinion on the events, we could start from there. But I'm not going to start from loose change, man. I mean, that's just bait. You know what I mean? Like that's just, I don't know. You can't start with something that's so flawed as a source, really, when talking about this stuff. I don't know.
Well,
anyway,
I don't know. It was pretty convincing. I thought that.
Well,
yeah, Steve,
personal conviction is not
a lack of evidence.
Truth, but I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah. As a lack of evidence is not necessarily evidence of something else. And I think this is something that's very important to bear in mind. Just because there is not evidence of, or you think there's not evidence, or the claims are being made that there is not evidence that it's a plane, that does not mean automatically that there is evidence of a missile. And if the claim is being made that it's a missile attack, then that's the evidence that needs to be brought forward.
Yeah,
you don't disprove a plane flying into the building by not having evidence of a missile attack. If you want to make the claim of a missile attack, you need to provide evidence of a missile attack. And ballistically, the damage doesn't seem consistent to me with a missile attack.
Yeah, and again, like you have to be able to explain away a lot of established fact. Like again, like the people who are on the plane, they were real people. Like I don't think that should be up for debate. For the same reason why the Sandy Hook false flag attack should be up for debate, right? Like there's a lot of things that wouldn't make sense if you're just, I don't know, saying it's a missile or whatever. But Steve, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you other than I think your skepticism should be bolstered by what other people have to say about documentaries such as Loose Change and other 9/11 truther material, right? If you really want to look at this objectively, if you really want to figure out what the truth is here, you have to look at all the sides here. And I'm telling you, as someone who has also looked into this and has wondered for myself, well, what's really going on here? It's not a good place to start. Those series of films, they're like the worst, honestly. I'm not kidding. They're really, really bad. But anyway, Steve, I'm gonna have to let you go. But I do appreciate you calling in and giving your perspective. Obviously, of course, Richard and I disagree. And I think we've outlined that clearly enough. But I do feel different talking about this subject today because it's like, just like the Sandy Hook stuff, like there's real people's lives that were involved with this. So it's not just like theoretical fun territory for me. You know what I mean? Like this is a tragedy that has affected, I mean, really millions, right? But like on a personal level, less than that, of course. And it's a shame. It's a shame that we have to look at material that fuels, sort of bolsters what we want to believe, which is no, we can't think that this actually happened the way it is. There must be something fishy going on here. I don't know. It can be a good instinct, but a bad instinct too, when it leads to people getting hurt. But hey, I want to let you guys know about another way you can support this show. If you want to become a member, you can totally do that. What is that? Well, on YouTube, you can click that little join button and you can become a member. When you do that, whenever you watch the show live, you get cool little emojis in the chat and your name gets highlighted in the chat as well. And you're also going to be immune to chat timeouts if you do that. And you can do that as little as 99 cents per month if you want to support the show that way. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Another thing is if you shop at Amazon, you can support the ACA at actually no cost to you. All you have to do is visit tiny.cc/Amazon Smile ACA, and you can designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity, and Amazon will donate a portion of their profit directly to the ACA. So if you don't like charity, if you're just like, nah, I'm just gonna listen to this guy's show for free for, I don't know, a month, 2 months, a year, this is a way to do it. If you still want to help this show out and be lazy about it, like, you can do that. Obviously, I don't think everybody that does this is lazy, but it's a good way to kind of support the purchases that you're already going to make towards something that you believe in, which is hopefully this program. So appreciate everybody who donates in both of those ways. You guys are awesome. And let's see, we got a promo that I need to show you guys. So we're going to play that right now. Check it out.
Would you go to your mother and say, hey mum, do you have a penis in your panties? Because if the answer is no, then why would you ask somebody that you're on a date that question?
Nicely in my bedroom, but it doesn't mean that I think they're going to do anything special for me.
I'm not going to be able to recharge my crystal in the moonlight and then put it in my water and expect like something to happen.
Richard, I think you've been watching the Pope lately.
I have indeed been watching the Pope. I'm like, God, I sneak under his bed covers every night and just have a quick peek.
Please like and subscribe to the channel. Oh, it means so much to us if you do, and comment as well. Start a fight in the comments. I don't know, make something controversial. Say pineapple is good on pizza, and I'll back you up on that.
I mean, they're going to end up being queer people everywhere. We're making more every single day. And so it's inevitable that not everybody can run away from the thing that they want to run away from.
And we're going back to the show. We're going to be taking some more calls. So just to remind you guys as well, we still have some open lines here in the second half of the show. So we'd love to talk to you. Please consider calling the show with the number below or that tiny.cc link. And I'd love to hear from you. Again, we're talking a lot about conspiracies today. Doesn't have to be that. Can be whatever we usually take on this show. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and talk to our next person. We got Ricardo calling in from Italy. Ricardo, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi there. Everything's fine here. So I wanted to talk about a really fun interaction I had with a believer. I'm an atheist, by the way.
Cool.
And so this was the best interaction I ever had about theology with someone whom I disagree with. And just for a premise, we have been classmates for 4 years, so we already knew each other. Well, we aren't currently. We are no longer classmates, so he wasn't, let's say, forced to be nice to me. But it was good. We were both interested in finding the truth, and so we thought that one of us must be closer to it. So, sorry, a discussion can only be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, sure. So I see that, according to the call screener here, you had a conversation with him regarding the Shroud of Turin, which is always a funny topic. So tell me how that went. That wasn't really the primary point of our discussion, even because
I knew that was coming because we have been to a Catholic school, and that's something that has been told over the years multiple times. But I've never did my homework and looked really too much into it. So I was just thinking about calling you to copy from yours. And yes, that was just the only point that at the moment I couldn't respond to. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about the Shroud of Turin. Richard, are you familiar with the Shroud of Turin?
I am familiar with the Shroud of Turin, and I'm also familiar with the act in the Middle Ages and coming up just before the Reformation of pilgrimage, Christian pilgrimage in Europe, and how it was big business.
Yes. So, let's talk about the Catholic Church for a second here, okay? If you were like me and you grew up as a Protestant in the United States, you may not know much about the Catholic Church and how it works. It's a little bit different than the rest of us, right? Catholics are really funny about their history. They talk a lot about saints, they talk a lot about these miracles that happen, and they also have a lot of sacred relics that they talk about. In fact, multiple sacred relics sometimes of the same thing. Like people will claim they have the foreskin of Jesus, for example, or part of the spear that pierced Jesus's side, right? Like there's all kinds of these little kinds of, I don't know, trinkets that get touted as, hey, this is the real deal. Pretty much every single time they've ever done analysis of this stuff.
Sorry, Dan, I need to interrupt you regarding the foreskin of Jesus, because there were several foreskins of Jesus hanging around.
There's more than one, which is like, what does that mean? Right? Is he like, I don't know, I know it's big in the Jewish community to like do that. Does that mean he's like becomes extra Jewish if you get it cut off multiple times? I don't know what that means. I don't know how that works. But anyway, so that's the thing. And the Shroud of Turin is one of these things, right? I don't know the exact history as to why it got as popular as it did. I think it's because there were some groups claiming that, oh no, this is actually legit, because they did some tests on it and it was like, no, this is a real thing. But then other tests were done on it. Specifically, they tested flower pollen on that stuff. I remember that. They tested for any like blood stains and things like that. And they dated the Shroud of Turin to about the middle of like the 14th century, I think is what it was, something like that, right? Like as a medieval artifact. And of course, it can't be a medieval artifact if it's supposed to be, the Shroud of Turin. It's supposed to be the thing that covered Jesus while he was in the tomb. And it's not. Like, all these dating methods have shown otherwise. So if you are arguing with somebody about the Shroud of Turin being legit, just look up the Wikipedia article on this thing. I know I've seen it before. There's all kinds of stuff where they talk about the testing for it. And you can also say, oh, which one? Because there's been multiple Shrouds of Turin that have been put around. But there is one in particular that people like to talk about. So, yeah, I mean, it's bullshit, just like every other of the relics that they say is real. I mean, we're talking about an event in history that we don't even know where it happened. We don't know exactly what time it happened at, and we don't know about where any of the people that were there, where they gone to, and where their stuff's at. So that's why when you go to Jerusalem, you're going to see like multiple tomb sites and multiple places where Jesus was supposedly baptized in the River Jordan. Like there's a whole tourism industry that's based on this stuff. And the Shroud of Turin is just like one of those things supporting that industry. It really is. Anyway, that's a lot of information there, Ricardo. Did you get all that?
Yes. But okay, I already knew about the carbon dating. That was something, I think it was done in the 80s. But at least in Italy, being not very popular, but it's popular. There are mainly, the carbon dating is contested because the sample has been taken from a corner that was damaged and has been repaired, and also it wasn't handled properly like you would expect from a normal archaeological item. It was passed around many times during the Middle Ages, especially, and all of that. So the carbon dating, from what I can see, at least, seems to not be legit. That one from the 1980s.
Let's say you're not convinced. Ricardo. Let's say you're not convinced by the carbon dating. What about the flower pollen dating? What about the tests for bloodstains? What about? I mean, like I just pulled up the Wikipedia article now. They were doing chemical reactions on this stuff to see how old this stuff was. I mean, carbon dating, I think, was done, but it's just one of many methods that were used on this thing, right? It's we don't have to look at just one particular source. I mean, this was something that was so interesting. I guess it was interesting to people because it said it had Jesus's face on it, right? Like that was the claim. You could see Jesus's face. So maybe that's why it got more popular. But
yeah,
there's more than one method here than just the carbon dating, right?
Yeah, I know that the carbon dating is being contested, and the very big thing about it is that they say that the only way they have managed to replicate an image like that is by using a UV light at millions of watts. That's the only thing that seems to make it somewhat legit. But for now, I've only searched for Christian sources, and I'm familiar with those, but not much with the.
Ricardo, what is the actual evidence your friend is suggesting that it is the Turin Shroud?
Yeah.
Is there something in particular rather than it just being...
I don't believe it is. I must...
Yeah, but your friend, what's your friend saying? Why does your friend believe it?
Well, it's not really that they do believe it. Even one of my professor, who was in a documentary that, from what he has said, has been transmitted, I think, in South America, and has been seen by millions of people. He was there as an expert of the Gospels, not for the Sindon. Sorry, Sindon is the Italian name. The Turin Shroud. He said, well, okay, I don't know if that's real, but it seems to be, but I don't really care. The only reason I care about this is that I don't know how that could have been done. I know that I don't think it's by divine intervention. But I don't know. I was just curious to know if you know something about the UV light argument, and if there is a counter argument for that.
There are people that say that the countenance of Jesus, right, his face, like actually radiated to the point where that radiation, I don't know how they describe the radiation, but there's something about the radiation came from Jesus and left that face mark. And I think that's what you're talking about, right? And that's what they pick out. Yeah. Again, like, it could be anything, right? Like there's already so many things that are suspect with all these relics. So you have to be very careful when looking at this stuff. I really don't have to think I have to propose an explanation as to why you see some of the material on there in order for me to also simultaneously make the claim that it's probably not from Jesus of Nazareth, right? Like that's like one of many, many different possibilities. And if we have enough evidence saying that that's not the best explanation, I don't think I should just settle and say, well, we don't know. I guess we should settle for this explanation for it, right? Like, I think there's enough room to doubt to say that it could be other things. Now, I'll be honest with you. I haven't thought about the Shroud of Turin in a long time. I don't really know what I would say, what I think it is. But I'm sure some other people have thought it through and have given a good response. And again, I realize too, I'm looking at the English language Wikipedia, so it may not come up the same way if you look it up in Italian. But like I'm literally seeing like 10 different methods of how they've dated this thing, and none of them have really shown any conclusion that this would come from Jesus. And it would be weird if he did, honestly. It's really strange how a lot of this stuff kind of turns out, but that's my thoughts on it. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, one of the things to remember, Ricardo, is that when a claim is being made about something, especially a specific object, the claim shouldn't be made with, well, what about this? What about this? What about this in mind? The claim is, if you're claiming that it's a shroud from Jesus, the evidence should be presented that it is a shroud from Jesus.
Yeah.
And when you talk to a lot of people who believe in the Turin shrouds, that is never presented. What is presented is, well, how do you explain this? Well, how do you explain this? Well, how do you explain the image? How do you explain the carbon dating? That's irrelevant. The claim being made is, this is the shroud from Jesus. So where is the evidence for that? And those are the questions we should be asking. We shouldn't have to go out and debunk something that there is no evidence for to begin with. Once you've presented the evidence, then we can examine the evidence. But just imagine is a shroud that covered Jesus is not evidence. That's the claim.
Right. Imagine like if another religious group, right, comes and said, actually, this is the shroud that covered our Lord and Savior for our religious group. We don't have to suddenly think of, oh, well, is this the most likely explanation because this group of people is claiming for it to be, right? We don't have to go that way. People can throw out claims and observations all they want. We just have to look at what we know about this thing. What we do know about this thing is that it definitely isn't from the times of ancient Judea, right? Like it's not 2,000 years old. I think every single study that's ever been done on this that has been honest has concluded that. So the possibility of it being Jesus should be ruled out just by that, unless, Jesus manipulated the Shroud of Turin in such a way to that scientific, inquiry would not lend it to be, 2,000 years old. But that seems very odd and very specific, and also kind of against Jesus' whole deal.
Oh, looks like we've lost Dan.
Hey, Richard,
you're left with me, I'm afraid, Ricardo.
Sorry,
anyway, Ricardo, that was a lot. What do you think?
For a second. Well, I think, I don't believe it, obviously. And, I rejected, but I was just curious because, yes, you don't really need to debunk it they need to first show you that valuable evidence that it can be from Jesus. But the more arguments you have against it, the more maybe you could instigate some doubts in that.
Yeah,
what we should do, Ricardo, is look at what we do know. And what we do know is that there was an extensive trade in relics in the Middle Ages. People went all over to see things, whether it was, the alleged foreskins of Jesus. Who, by the way, I've got to come back to this point because I wanted to make this earlier and I didn't get a chance. So there were two.
My mother said once. Sorry. I joked. My mother said one day, looking at a collection of relics in our church, is that the pastors are exchanging relics like baseball cards, basically.
That's one way to put it.
And that should be enough to tell you that there's, if somebody's making a claim at the time, and this was going on for hundreds of years, at the time when so many people were claiming so many relics and there were so many duplicates of these relics, that you don't just take as standard that these are all true. You need to have some kind of evidence to suggest, well, this is actually an authentic thing. This is an authentic Turin shroud. This is an authentic head covering of Jesus. This is an authentic foreskin of Jesus. And you've got to, you need that evidence. You can't just make the claim Anybody
If
can
anything,
make the claim.
yeah, if anything, it should make you more skeptical, right? Because of how many things have proven to be not true, or at least demonstrated to be suspect. But anyway, Ricardo, I know you're on our side. I know you're looking for just ways to talk to your friend about this stuff. So, I mean, that's what I would go with. I would counter with, look, what you've proposed is just one possible explanation, right? There are lots of explanations, some of which we may not have access to or could even talk about, but we need to talk about whether or not this is the most reasonable one. And I don't think it is. But there's a lot of people that have obviously looked into this, people with high scientific credentials who are like, yeah, no, this isn't real. And I'm just going to go with that. I'm not going to go and just say, oh, well, the shroud thing sounds like it's, yeah, that looks like Jesus's face. I don't know. I don't know if it works like that. But anyway, Ricardo, we got to let you go. We got to talk to some other people. But thanks so much for calling in. Ricardo has called in before, and he's like, I don't know, he's the only caller I've had from Italy, and I just think that's kind of neat. That's a very particular country that we have not had correspondence with, and now Ricardo's like our Italian guy. He's our Italian guy that calls in, and that's cool. I like it. But anyway, we have some more quick announcements that I need to get out of the way. We have a brand new store, so you should check that out. It's at tiny.cc/merch ACA, and you can check out all of the favorite stuff on there, the hoodies, the t-shirts, and the other fun things, including our t-shirt of the month. And we got a new one this month. You can see it on the screen there if you're watching the video. If you've got the truth, we want to hear it. And then it's a guy with a phone, the Truth Wanted on it, and he's looking at UFOs, he's looking at Bigfoot, he's looking at a bunch of stuff in the background. So shout outs to Greg, our executive producer, I think, for putting that one together. But we're going to keep trying to do these monthly t-shirts. So if you want to support the show, that's a great way to do it. You can also listen to audio only versions of this show if you're not doing that already, but you can do that on the AEN Podcast Network, which is a separate channel where we host all the shows. You can do that at tiny.cc/AEN podcast for your one-stop shop. Truth Wanted's on there, Nonprofits is on there, all the fun stuff, right, Richard?
Yeah, it's great stuff. And I often catch up with the shows when I'm driving to work if I miss one of the shows, because they're on some of them are on kind of late for me to catch up with. I'm usually asleep when Truth Wanted airs, so I catch up with that the day after when I'm driving to work. So it's a great little podcast to get hold of if you've not caught up with the show live.
Honestly, don't know how you make time for us. All you folks that listen outside of the United States, you guys are awesome. It really warms my heart knowing that the random bullshit that I spew out on a weekly basis is being consumed by you guys, and that means a lot. It really does. Thank you for that. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk to some more folks. Next, I'm going to talk to David, who's calling in from North Carolina. David, you got personal beef with me. It says that you wanted to respond to something I said on Twitter, which is interesting. What do you got for us, David?
Hey, Richard, Subjectively Don. It's good to talk to you guys.
You guys and your Subjectively Don jokes. It'll never end, will it? It'll never end. I'll always be Subjectively Don. Anyway, I'm doing all right, David. How you doing?
Wonderful. It's been a happy Friday. Got that post-nut clarity. I'm feeling really good right now.
Wow, holy shit. That is too much information. But I appreciate your honesty. Yeah, thanks for that. What's up, David? What do you want to talk to us about?
Okay, the idea was, and I kind of half agree, so I'm on the fence about it, that the country, I guess, couldn't come together. Like, we'd have to give the backstory, and if you could, for the people to understand what we're talking about. The claim was, we couldn't even agree that Alex Jones deserves prison time, correct?
Yes. For context, I think it was, did I say this today or yesterday? Time is a construct. I don't know. I made a tweet on Twitter saying we as a country can't, I'm paraphrasing my own tweet here, but we can't even agree that Alex Jones deserves prison time. The reason why I said this is because I was just reading the comments on Twitter of all of the news articles talking about the recent Alex Jones stuff. And there's still people who are like, I don't know. I think they're treating this Alex Jones guy a little too harshly, you know, and sort of people who are kind of pro Jones, which is like, again, I spent 20 minutes in the first half of the show talking about this guy and why you should not like him. But I understand most people don't know that. They just know about the few couple things that people claim he's right on and maybe support him. But he's a really bad guy. I think if anybody deserves prison time, and I'm not a fan of the prison industrial complex, but if anybody, you know, deserves a punishment, I guess, like, I think Alex Jones is the guy. I don't know. Like, he's did bad things. Families were like tortured for days on end by people who are randomly harassing them for years, and it's still happening. So I don't feel bad for him for that and all the other stuff he's done. Anyway, so that's my take on it, David. You say you agree, but you also disagree. So what does that mean?
Well, thank you, because it is, I guess, not even a morality crime anymore. And I'm sorry I missed the first half of the show. I was busy. I was preoccupied.
Oh yeah, I went, David. You're gonna go back to this show, and you're gonna realize how much time I spent to Alex Jones today. It was a lot. It was a lot. So
yeah, preoccupied. Richard, what's your take, man? Can I hear it?
What's my take? What is a specific claim? What? Because you'll have missed this with being.
I said Alex Jones deserves prison time. I think that's the claim. I think, or you know, whether or not you agree with that. I know but see, Richard, you
David,
literally just knew about this guy from me telling you. So I don't know if you're. I don't know.
Yeah. He's got a bias towards. He's got a.
I don't have a background on him. David, do you consider it correct that Alex Jones inspired people to go and harass families who lost their children in these attacks? Do you agree? Do you think that's true?
Not.
Why not?
The next level up, where I do agree that my man should be in prison. He's not my man. I agree that Alex Jones should be in prison. But the idea that we can't all agree on it as a country, I don't agree with. I think that at the moment, we definitely don't agree on it as the country because my man is a pseudo cult leader.
Yeah.
But I feel I have the hope. I want to put that in quotes there because it's a reasonable hope, you know, based on evidence that if we could talk with everyone who does not agree, that eventually minds could be changed. I understand that it's very polarized at the moment, and there's what's a good way to phrase this? Alex Jones stands, right? If people like hardcore try to see him.
But I think that's a bit different from what we're talking about, right? Because I'm saying that people can't agree right now. And ostensibly, I think you actually agree with that because you're saying, yes, we have to convince people, but I think we can convince people. But if you're saying we have to convince people, then I think I'm still right in saying that we can't all agree with that right now. But, you know, regardless of that point, 6 million visitors a month on a website is a lot of people, and that's just the people who actively follow him, right? Like, that's a lot of people. I used to be of the mind, David, that if we just talk to people enough, like, we can eventually change people's minds and we can do anything. I don't think I believe that anymore, honestly. And that's just a personal take on human psychology. But I think there's some people who are so deeply entrenched in their beliefs that nothing you can do through reason is going to change their mind. I mean, hell, look at Alex Jones himself, right? Guy's been doing this for over 20 years and he's still on it. And he still thinks that this Sandy Hook stuff was fake. And he said that like, you know, and he's the guy that's getting in trouble for all this. So I don't know, man. I don't know if we can have a rational discourse with everybody. I mean, I'm going to try. Don't get me wrong. I will always do my best, even with people who I think are just so on the other side of the extreme, only because I was on the other side. I wasn't an extremist, but I definitely had some beliefs that needed challenging. And because somebody took the time out of their day to have a conversation with me, that was a stepping stone in their process that helped me become the person that I am today. So I do fully believe in people having conversations and doing the best that they can. But I don't know. I don't know if everybody can come to that, man. I'm skeptical of that. What do you think, David?
So here we go. Yes, we do agree then. So then we're on to a different claim. I agree that at the moment, not everyone can agree. And now we're on to, I guess I just want to encourage everybody. Hopefully, the sound of my very voice will continue. That this is an ongoing thing. That we're striving for a higher epistemological standard here in America, and it is sad to face these indoctrinations that we're going up against.
These conversations are...
Yeah, he's a cool guy. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, these conversations are very important, David, and that's how we get to, if it's possible to change people's minds, that's how we get to do it, by having these conversations. And they can be like Antoinette and Dan, and I'm assuming yourself have these conversations with people as well. You don't have to come on air to do it. And talking to people and who have opposing views and just having those conversations can go a long way to start to change someone's mind. We don't have to do it at a click of a finger. We don't have to be that person that it instigates that that momentary release of all that bad thinking and suddenly change their mind. But we can plant seeds and set things into motion. And having those conversations is a very important step to doing that.
Yep, it's very true.
Moment by moment. Don't know how else to say it. Moment by moment. That's all we can do.
I mean, we can all, we could set up a course and try to train a bunch of people and having conversations with people. And of course, I've participated in the education of doing said courses. I've talked about street epistemology at conferences and also on this show all the time. But I'm just one person. I mean, I try to do my best and I do what I can with folks, but it takes a lot of time to learn how to do critical thinking, something I'm still learning every day, as well as figure out what's fact from fiction about the history of even just the events that we're talking about right now. I mean, there's some people that will even still dispute that Jones never even talked about the Sandy Hook stuff, or at least never claimed that it was a false flag. Jones said that himself. Originally, I believe, when talking about the deposition, he was like, no, that's like edited footage. Like he didn't actually say that, but of course he did. So I don't know. There's a lot of people that
Do you guys have a favorite quote from the judge? You've obviously watched the civil trial that's going on. I absolutely love the judge.
Let me tell you, I like that the judge had to actually tell this man to close his mouth, because somebody quoted that on Twitter. They were like, I don't want to see the inside of your mouth. And somebody was like, oh, wow, that judge is talking about, man, that judge doesn't sound very fair. That sounds pretty biased in the way that he's speaking to him. And somebody was correcting them and being like, no, the judge is literally telling him to close his mouth because he's opening it for it to show that he doesn't have gum in it. And he's just massaging like a root canal he had or something. Like, it's just wild. It's crazy. It is absolutely madness. I recommend looking up clips of this case because it'll entertain you. That's for sure. But man, our court system has really become new reality television for us, hasn't it? I mean, it's been like that for like a few decades now, but this especially is really crazy. Anyway, David, I got to let you go. We got to take at least one more call here, I think, before the end, but I do appreciate your call and your perspective. And I'm glad you responded to my Twitter. That means somebody's following me on there. So that's good.
I try to interact,
David.
Man. At least you're...
Yeah. Oh, I drop button. It takes a few seconds to actually drop, but I appreciate you following me on there. Everybody should follow me on Twitter, I think. But that's just my opinion. Man, I am going to be ready to stop talking about Alex Jones today because we've been talking about him a lot. But I get it. We got a couple more minutes here, so it might still come up. We'll see. Before we get to the next call here, I just want to talk about how you can contact me. One of those ways is, of course, on my Twitter. But if you want to email the show in general, you can do that. It's truth@atheist-community.org. That not only goes to me, but also the other hosts and pretty much anybody that does work for TruthWanted. You can also reach out to the ACA in general at tv@atheist-community.org. And you can see what's going on our website. It's atheist-community.org. Funny that. So yeah, we appreciate all the correspondence. I read every single email that gets sent to me. So I love it when you guys send me stuff. It's great. And I always try to respond if I can. So thank you to everybody that does that on there. You guys are really cool. And one other thing I need to point out, there is a Facebook group and it's run by fans for fans. So you can check that out. It's tiny.cc/FBTW G. You can interact with other people on there, and hosts occasionally post on there too, as well as all the other fan Facebook pages and stuff that are out there for the other shows. So really cool stuff. But Richard, we got to talk to one more person tonight. I think we're going to talk to James, who's calling in from Texas. James, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Yo, Dan. Yo, Richard. How you guys doing on a happy Friday?
Doing all right, man. Just hanging out, doing my thing. How about you?
Rock and roll. Oh, enjoying life. About to have dinner with my daughter here in a minute. Yeah, I just want to, for all those who do believe what I'm about to say, it's not my point to try to convince people not to believe. However, my statement stands true and will probably stand true to me to the day I die. There is no God, there is no gods, and there is nothing supernatural. And I have a hypothesis.
Okay.
So,
I think we're on the same page with you so far, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, as far as I'm concerned, all the definitions I've heard for a God that people believe in, it presents itself as something that is supernatural. So I question, how do you know what is supernatural if all that we have before us is our natural realm? So if this said God is supernatural, when and if we have the ability to, quote unquote, test and verify this question mark, that is the unknown, it's no longer supernatural, because if we were able to test it, and now it comports to our natural realm, therefore it's not supernatural. So therefore nothing supernatural will ever exist. Nothing of a God quality will ever exist. So all we have is our natural realm, and anything and everything within our universe is considered natural. Just because it's something that we cannot understand, why is it necessary for us to label it a God or label it something supernatural? So that's my stance.
Now, James, I'm going to put on my apologist hat on here. It's not a very good looking hat.
Please do.
In fact, it's quite ugly. I'll be honest. I would never wear it in public, but I'm putting it on here anyway. And, I would say, James, you're presupposing the natural, right? You're presupposing naturalism, in fact. By presupposing naturalism as your foundation for your epistemic beliefs, you can't even leave in the room for the possibility of the supernatural. So if something supernatural did occur and your only methods of investigating it are through natural means, how would you know that it even happened?
It would still be, I don't know. That's all there is to it. So yes, I am presupposing the natural. And why not? When that's all that we have before us that we understand. There is yet to be anything that we can call and label supernatural. I really find that very baffling.
Yeah. There was something very interesting that you said at the start of this call, which I want to pick up on. And you said that all the explanations of God that you've ever heard, what are we discounting and then you followed that on with, so there are no gods. But what if there's an explanation for a God that you're not aware of and that doesn't fall into the category of supernatural? How are you making the statement that there are no gods?
So, okay, I would question, so anybody who's claiming a God that comports to their natural realm, why is it that this thing is a God? What would be their definition for that God? And by all means, if they want to call it a God, I'll accept it. So yeah, I find that interesting. I'm just saying most of the standing belief is that it's a disembodied mind, a creator of all. And to me, that is something that is beyond our natural realm. That is supernatural. It's outside of space and time. How can something be outside of space and time yet react with our space and time? I find that very interesting. So
yeah.
I mean, interesting. If you go back to the start of the Hebrew Bible, that God wasn't an incorporeal being. It was a physical being. That's what the people at the time in Proto-Judaism actually believed. And those who were writing the Hebrew Bible thought that it was a giant and carved footprints representing him and gave him footstools and features, and he had all these physical characteristics. So God hasn't always been, even the Christian God hasn't always been incorporeal. I think that's come as the gaps it can fit into has shrank down, and the evidence has shown that it's not been there.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, right? When apologists talk about this issue, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to run with, well, God is this, like you said, incorporeal, being. He's a mind without a body, right? Like that's kind of how they describe it, which, as you pointed out, a lot of the Bible doesn't actually describe God like that. But they're going to say, well, don't take into that stuff into account. We're just talking about basic definitions here of what we're describing here. But quite frankly, as you point out, I don't know what we're talking about. I don't know what we're defining. Now, there's a lot of things out there that we may not have exact parameters or definitions for, but we still know exist, or at least have an intuitive understanding of consciousness. For example, there's been a lot of propositions as to what that actually means. There's been some definitions put out there. I personally don't know of a be-all, end-all one. I don't know if anybody does, but like we still talk about that as something that exists. Maybe it doesn't exist. I don't know. I live my life like it is because it directly impacts me and the lives of others, and these concepts are useful. A God concept not only isn't useful, I mean, it can be useful, but isn't useful for somebody like me, but also can be the basis for harm. And you can do a lot of bad things with a God concept, but even outside of the philosophical definitions of God, I mean, to me, you have to go beyond just arguing for it, right? You can come up with arguments all day, but if you don't have good evidence for it, and if we're defining evidence as things that can be examined by the natural, then yeah, I would be skeptical of it. Because again, going back to the claims of Christianity, God intersects with the natural all the time. God is, God did stuff. He was on earth as Jesus, turning water into wine. That's something we could look at, that we could touch. And you know what? Guarantee you that, well, actually, I'm not going to go that far because I don't think the miracles actually happened. But like, if you're an early follower of Jesus, you probably want to hear about the miracles, right? If Jesus just was talking about, oh, we should all believe in God because of this philosophical definition that I've come up with. I mean, I guess that's worked for some people, but probably not going to be as convincing as, look, I'm God. I brought this man back from the dead. I like duplicated these fishes and loaves. Check me out. Like that's personally going to be more convincing to me. I don't know. But anyway, saying a lot of things here, James. What do you think?
Yeah, those are all great stories. That to me, not to sound like an attorney, but that's all hearsay. Like,
I mean, it is.
Those are just claims. Those are claims without any demonstration to back it up, and that's using the Bible to demonstrate the existence of a God, or the existence that Jesus was the flesh of a God, and it came down to earth and abolished our sins and died for us and rose again in 3 days. Those are all wonderful stories, great. That's all I got to say to it. And again, I keep premising on those who live their life and they live a good life believing this. By all means, hearing my voice and hearing what I say, I'm not trying to tell people to stop believing. I just find it very interesting that those people who are adults believe this story, yet they don't believe Santa Claus exists. So I find that very interesting because it's very similar to the Santa Claus story.
It kind of is, right? I mean, it is kind of a atheist stereotype to point out the relationship between Santa Claus and God. But you're not wrong. I mean, like, it is a story that's been told, and if you tried to run arguments for the existence of Santa, I'm sure they'd probably tie in pretty similar with arguments for God on that like kind of base philosophy level. But what can you do, right, James? I don't know. We can talk to people about it, but I agree. It's kind of hard to be like, well, if it's doing good for your life, if I take that away from you and something bad would happen,
right?
Is it ethical then? I don't know. We've talked about that before, and that's a whole other can of worms. I will say this. I feel like I'm living a better life, not just like mentally, but also morally than I am now as an atheist than I ever was as a Christian. If anything, my Christianity influenced my bigotry towards gay people, towards women, and towards, I don't know, lots of other groups too. So anyway, that's all I think we have time for. But thanks again, James, for calling in on that perspective, and appreciate you calling in. And with that, call done, I think, Richard, we are at the tail end of the show. Thanks so much for coming back on, Richard.
It's been fun, and I'm happy to come on anytime. I've enjoyed learning about Alex Jones.
Yeah, like I said, folks, I know I talked a lot. Like, this is a subject that, again, I just know a lot about, and I'm gonna like info dump on. So I'm glad I got to do it today. But let me know if you like that kind of stuff in the future, or if it's too boring to have me monologue for like 20 minutes. If you'll enjoy that stuff, I want to know about it, because we may incorporate it for other topics in the future, not just me, but for Aaron and MD Aware and anybody else that comes on, can kind of talk about this stuff. So please let me know in the comments, give me some feedback. And with that out of the way, I want to again, thank you all for watching today's show. Please like and subscribe and comment if you're watching this on YouTube. We love that. Again, that engagement is super good for us, and looking at those comments does help give us some great feedback. We are going to go to the crew camp now. Actually, I think I got all my other announcements out of the way, so let's talk to the crew. Look at that crew. Aw, and we got a kitty in there too. Look at that. We love our cats here at the ACA. I don't know what it is, but they always find a way to get on camera every single time. Thank you so much, crew. And thank you to all the other volunteers that help make this show happen. There's a lot of people that help write with the show notes, help moderate the chat. And if you're interested in ever doing that, hey, feel free to email us at the addresses that we talked about, and we'd love to see what we can do for you. But with all that out of the way, that is going to be it for tonight. Richard, do you have any words of wisdom for us tonight? Any wise words?
I think putting wise words on me is a very dodgy ground to stand on. Just to keep having conversations, having conversations with people, and investigate. We all make mistakes. It's very easy as a skeptic to sit here and say you should think better, but we should think better, because we make mistakes all the time. My brain makes mistakes all the time. I'm sure Dan's does. All of our brains. They're just wired that way. That's how we are. So don't just put the onus on the people with belief in supernatural and belief in gods or aliens visiting Earth and all that stuff. Check yourself, and that's how skepticism begins. Checking yourself and looking at your own beliefs in the way you examine things, and then have those conversations with other people.
Yeah, and there's a saying amongst my people, which is check yourself before you wreck yourself. And I think that sums up what you're telling us here, Richard. So thank you for that words of wisdom. Don't sell yourself short, bud. They let you have a microphone too, so you must be doing something right. But hey, I'm Objectively Dan, and this is Richard Gilliver. This has been another episode of TruthWanted. Thanks so much for stopping by. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central, between the Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.